Hey, what's up, Silas here. So this is going to be another meme whisperer, and the meme's on the screen right now. It's it's an NPC. It's an NPC meme. It's a black NPC. NPC of color, non-playable color, non-color playable. I don't know. NPOC, non-playable of color person. NPC POC. I don't know. Whatever you call these things, I don't know what would be called that appropriate term for this. Non-playable character of color. NPCOC. 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 It's an NPCOC. NPCOC. NPCOC is on the screen right now, and it's Black Lives Matter co-founder. I'm a trained Marxist. Then this little guy asking, read the letter Marx wrote to Engels on July 30th, 1862. Pulls out a purple phone, reads it, and then the angry eyebrows. And now we're going to get into reading that actual letter. So, some relation with this. I've been looking around and just wondering, like, with the United States of America, there's something that's odd. Some of the things that okay, Trump came out and he recently, there's a Black Lives Matter leader, and Black Lives Matter is a massive movement. They're all over the place. For such oppressed people, they happen to have a rather massive movement involved in different sections, having all this influence, being able to have leaders, global leaders of these massive cities paint Black Lives Matter on the ground. I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy. I look at a place like in China, for example, and I look at the people who are supposedly under oppression, like the Uyghur Muslims, and I'm wondering, do they get to paint Uyghur Muslim lives matter on the streets of Beijing? Find where Xi Jinping has his like older house, and then the mayor of that place is like, yeah, we're going to just paint this Uyghur lives matter in front on the street in front of your house, like De Blasio is doing with Trump, trying to troll Trump by painting Black Lives Matter on the road with taxpayer-funded money on the actual road in front of Trump Tower. Okay, have at it. People are leaving Fifth Avenue. You have companies pulling out of New York City. And they're like, yeah, we're not coming back, because even Rock Nation, Jay-Z's company's like, yeah, we're moving. We're probably going to move out to New York City. You guys can't protect us. People are rioting. People are breaking into our stores. We're going to move. But that's what you're worried about. You're worried about painting Black Lives Matter on the street instead of the actual. So anyway, so Black Matter leader Hawk Newsom called to burn down this system. And then Trump says that's treason, sedition, and insurrection. Is it not? I mean, this is problems occur not because of what X is, but because of how we define X. And there's that line from Princess Bride where it's like, oh, you keep using that word, but I don't think that words mean what you think it means. I've taken that further and say people keep using certain words, but they certainly can't think what I think they think that means. That might just be a little semantic thing, but then I'm also about the semantics. I'm all about the semantics. There might be a semantical thing where they definitely think it is what they think it means. Because that one before, it's like, I don't think it means what you think it means. It's like, no, 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 no. For someone, if I think it's cold outside, I definitely do think it's cold outside. To me, it's subjective. I think it's cold outside. Now, to you, the temperature is the temperature. It's 45 degrees now. Now, 45 degrees, I just said that. Is it Celsius? Is it Fahrenheit? It doesn't matter. If I just say it's 45 degrees out, and to me, I consider that to be cold. But to you, whether you think it's Fahrenheit, whether you think it's Celsius, whether you've lived in Siberia your whole life, when you think cold, you think some other temperature. Maybe it has to be below 20. So yeah, we're talking about. So anyway, maybe it has to be below 20. Maybe it has to be below freezing for you to consider something cold. But for somebody else, it could be multiple degrees. It could be dozens of degrees over freezing, and they still consider it cold. So we both have an actual idea of what cold is. We understand the concept of cold, but the actual temperature, the actual X that actually makes us, that actually sparks that idea of cold in our head is different. So this is what I'm talking about. System, we have an idea of what system is. We have an idea of what burning down the system is. To Trump, somebody saying this is accurately treason, sedition, insurrection. to the person, Hawk Newsom, somehow he thinks that system is worth actually going down. So there's different reasons there. So I'm trying to understand these things. And this is a long preamble before we get to actual reading, because I think it's important to get these things. I just had a recent reading of this article about capitalism. It turns out like capitalism, when people actually invented that word, when it actually started coming out to be, and it was pardon. I think it was pardon. I might be saying it wrong again because we were talking with my friend Steven, had a couple of series of conversations with him, and he was talking about the different like actual like pronunciation of it. And this is the thing: the different languages, different ways of pronouncing things. We need to understand what we're talking about here. This is the point of me having this whole thing, because I was talking about how when most socialists, communists, and people in regular parlance talk about capitalism, or it's the United States a capitalist system, we need to tear that down. I've realized from reading this actual history of capitalism that they are clearly not talking about the same thing I was talking about. I'm talking about free markets. I'm talking about competition. I'm talking about lack of regulation. I'm talking about increasing the access of people to be able to actually get resources. I'm talking about recognizing people's ability to actually own certain things and what exercise their actual agency in controlling the things that they have, their bodies, the people they associate with, the places they go, the things they do, the things they build, and not to have that be violated by these external forces. So when people talk about capitalism, and I look at what's happening in the United States and in other places with the governments and the fiat currency, with all the regulations, with all these rules and the taxation and all these things, I'm like, how are you considering that to be part of capitalism? But from the actual origin of it, of the word, that might be they're just talking about something else. They have something else in mind. Their X is talking about something else, but that X has the descriptive term of capitalism for various reasons that are not mine. So anyway, and then when I look at people talking about, oh, we're Marxists, we're open Marxists, another Black Lives Matter co-founder in this Black Lives Matter movement, and this Black Lives Matter, and then there's all these multiple things. It started during the Obama presidency with the hands up, don't shoot thing that was proven not to be true, but it's something else. It means all these different things to so many other people. I have have a playlist about Black Lives Matter that goes into what I think it meant, but that might not be what it means to most people. But I don't even know when I can get into that right now. But anyway, I've been wondering, how are these people so open with being Marxist? How are they so open with the vitriol? How are they so open to just saying we're to tear this down, we're going to do this and that? Do they just don't think there's actually going to be any retribution to it? Is this some kind of op where they're like, oh, we'd rather have these people out in the open so we can actually just track them and know what they're doing instead of them actually going underground and doing something actually that would actually harm more people? Is it a situation where America just thinks it's this bureaucratic rot. They just don't care. They're switching to one system or the other. Or are they just so confident that they think, oh, there's no way these people can actually affect anything? Is it just such a small percentage of people? I don't understand. I'm shocked because from what I know about Marxism, this stuff is garbage. So anyway, so let's actually just get to the actual letter, and let's just get this meme whisperer after that long preamble. Thank you for still being here. So let's actually just get into the letter right now. I'm just going to read it as is, and on the screen, I think I'm going to be going with this is amarxerica, which is this thing I played off of. It's a play off of the Childish Gambino video of "This Is America," where he goes and shoots someone there. Then I used Uncle Sam and this thing about cultural Marxism kind of tearing down the United States of America. And this is just part of collectivism. It's collectivism politicized. It's been done in different ways. It's been done mostly in religions and faiths, but back in the day, olden times, religions were more tied together. Theologies were tied together. Then politics started becoming more separate from still some religious aspects of it. So these things, I'm not saying it's unique to Marxism. I'm not saying it's unique to any particular religion, but you see these things. It's just part of a collectivist mindset. And okay, so Engels and Marx are the parents or the originators of Marxism, of communism in general, as an ideology. And this is a letter from July 30th, 1962. July 30th, 1862. So dear Engels, from the enclosed scrawls, you will partly see how bothered I am. So far, okay, wait. Adult content, adult mentality required. Definitely adult mentality required. I skimmed over this. There's some adult words here. Anyway, Dear Engels, for the enclosed scrawls you will partly see how bothered I am. So far, the landlord has allowed himself to be placated. He has yet to receive £25. The piano chap, who is being paid in installments for the piano, should already have had £6 at the end of June, and is a most ill-mannered brute. I have rate demands in the house. I wonder why I went like some kind of like Dracula type of accent. I don't know. Might drop the accent. Might be better to drop the accent. It's kind of long. No, I'll go with the accent. It might change as we keep going. I have rate demands in the house amounting to £6. The wretched school fees, some £10. I have fortunately been able to pay, for I do my utmost to spare the children direct humiliation. I have paid the butcher $6 on account, the sum total of my quarterly taking from the presse. But I am again being dunned by that fellow, not to mention the baker, the tea grocer, the greengrocer, and other such sons of Belial as there may be. Okay, so I think it's kind of cool because I was just thinking it was all this cancel culture going back in the past. Like, oh, somebody said this back, and then I was like, oh, what if we actually had Twitter? What if we actually had Facebook? What if we actually had things? Because I was thinking, like, right now, in the future, there's going to be people who are alive right now, who are going to do amazing things that are really historically significant in the future. And you're going to be able to go back and listen to, like, just read through their Facebook walls and just have their regular conversations, maybe get, like, archives of different tweets and things. So just have their day-to-day. So this is kind of cool. Seems to be, so far, just a regular talk about just the day-to-day life of Marx. And kind of interesting here, he was struggling with money a bit, and there is some correlations with some current Marxists who are. There's this other meme I saw where it's like, oh, it's never your successful friends who are posting Marxist things, but this successful Marxists, the successful people who are communists, it's not necessarily out there, but some of it comes from this frustration, which is understanding frustration. This is why I'm reading some of these things. This is why I'm on these things. Problems occur because of how we define X. People are thinking it's capitalism. What they're talking about capitalism. What am I talking about capitalism? What are the solutions to the actual issue? I think that's important. There's also a different one. I had a conversation with a scientific socialist. He couldn't actually define exactly what he meant by anarcho-communism, but I don't know. Anyway, so back to this. And so again, we're going right in with that adult mentality required. Here we go. The Jewish nigger LaSalle, who I am glad to say is leaving at the end of the week, has happily lost another 5,000 thalers in an ill-judged speculation. The chap would sooner throw money down the drain than lend it to a friend, even though his interest and capital were guaranteed. In this he bases himself on the view that he ought to live the life of a Jewish baron, or a Jew created a baron, no doubt by the countess. Just imagine! This fellow knowing about the American affair, etc., and hence about the state of crisis I am in, had the insolence to ask me whether I would be willing to hand over one of my daughters to La Hadsfeld as a companion, and whether he himself could secure Gerstenberg's patronage for me. The fellow has wasted my time. What is more, the dolt opined that, since I was not engaged upon any business just now, but merely upon theoretical work, I might just as well kill time with him. In order to keep up a certain dehors vis-à-vis the fellow, my wife had to put in pawn everything that wasn't actually nailed or bolted down. Had I not been in this appalling position, and vexed by the way this parvenu flaunted his money-bags, he'd have amused me tremendously. Since I last saw him a year ago, he's gone quite mad. His head has been completely turned by his stay in Zurich, with Rustow, Harweg, etc., and the subsequent trip to Italy, and after that, by his Herr, Julian Schmidt, etc. He is now indisputably not only the greatest scholar, the profoundest thinker, the most brilliant man of science, and so forth, but also, and in addition, Don Juan cum revolutionary Cardinal Richelieu. And to this, the incessant chatter in a high falsetto voice, and anesthetic, histrionic gestures, the dogmatic tone. As a profound secret, he told me and my wife that he had advised Garibaldi not to make Rome the target of his attack, but instead proceed to Naples, there set himself up as dictator without affronting Victor Emmanuel, and call out the People's Army for a campaign against Austria. Lassalle had him conjure 300,000 men out of thin air, with whom, of course, the Piemontese army joined forces. And then, in accordance with a plan approved, so he says, by Mr. Rustow, a detached corps was to make, or rather set sail, for the Adriatic coast, Dalmatia, and incite Hungary to revolt. While heedless to the quadrilateral, the main body of the army under Garibaldi marched from Padua to Vienna, where the population instantly rebelled, all over 6 weeks. The fulcrum of action, Lassalle's political influence, or his pen in Berlin, and Rustow at the head of the corps of German volunteers attached to Garibaldi. Bonaparte, on the other hand, was paralyzed by this Lassallean coup d'éclat. He had just been to see Mazzini, and the latter too approved and admired his plan. He introduced himself to these people as the representative of the German revolutionary working class, and assumed they knew, to use his own words, that Izzy's pamphlet on the Italian War had prevented Prussia's intervention, and in fact that he had controlled the history of the past 3 years. Lassalle was absolutely furious with me and my wife for poking fun at his plans, quizzing him as an enlightened Bonapartist, etc. He shouted, blustered, flung himself about, and finally got it fixed in his mind that I was too abstract to understand politics. As to America, it's of no interest whatsoever, he says. The Yankees have no ideas. The freedom of the individual is merely a negative idea, etc. And other antiquated, moldering, speculative rubbish of the same ilk. As I have said, if circumstances had been different and he hadn't disrupted my work, the chap would have amused me tremendously. And on top of it all, the sheer gluttony and wanton lechery of this idealist. It is now quite plain to me, as the shape of his head and the way his hair grows also testify, that he is descended from the Negroes who accompanied Moses' flight from Egypt, unless his mother or paternal grandmother inbred with a nigger. Now this blend of Jewishness and Germanness, on the other hand, and the basic Negroid stock on the other, must inevitably give rise to a peculiar product. The fellow's importunity is also nigger-like. If, by the by, Mr. Rustow was responsible for thinking up the march from Padua to Vienna, I should say that he also has a screw loose. Salut. Poor Karl Marx. One of our nigger's greatest discoveries, which, however, he only confides to his closest friends, is that the Pelasgians were of Semitic descent, the main evidence in the book of Maccabees. The Jews sent emissaries to solicit the help of Greece on grounds of kinship. Furthermore, an Etruscan inscription was found in Perugia, and this was simultaneously deciphered by Hofrat Stucker in Berlin and in Italian, and both independently converted the Etruscan into the Hebrew alphabet. So that we can no longer discomfit him with the blue books, he has bought £20 worth of blue books under Bucher's guidance. He has converted Bucher to socialism, or so he maintains. Now Bucher is quite a fine little man, if a cranky one, and, in any case, I can't believe that he has accepted Lassalle's foreign policy. Bucher is the compositress in Julian Schmidt. If you'd been here for just a day or two, you'd have been able to lay in enough material to keep you laughing for a whole year. That's why I was so anxious to have you here. One doesn't get the opportunity like that every day. So this is from a site called the Marxist Capital. This is good stuff. It's out there. This material is out there. This man should be canceled. Cancel this man. I mean, and I think it's as I mentioned before, I like how this is just day-to-day stuff. This is regular correspondence. And even though I was saying he was kind of stuck on money because things just weren't that good. This whole idea that you look at the West now, it's like you look at all this abundance, look at all the success, and people have become fat off the land, if I'd say. Like the idea of poverty right now, compared to what it's been in majority of the world. If you're listening to this, chances are your idea of poverty is a lot different than what it's been for most of the people even living in the world today. Just back then in 1862, this man was involved. I mean, yeah, he's making fun of this guy for going around, LaSalle for actually going around and saying he's actually involved in those movers and shakers. But some of these things were actually involved. Like, talking about Vittorio Emanuele here, these are some big names. When I was living in Rome, like Piazza Vittorio Emanuele is like the main place, like the main like little castle kind of cake, wedding cake type of thing in the center of Rome. It's like up the road from the Colosseum, and then like it's Centro Storico of Rome, like the historical center. There's all these things, and so these names being thrown around. But some of these people were doing things. Like Marx might have just been some guy at this time, but he still moves and shakes. These guys are moving around talking to some big names that are actually big influences. And that's what I was talking about. This is just regular correspondence. Him using these words like Jewish nigger, just calling this person a nigger, just talking down on black people. I am so glad I'm alive right now. This current timeline is the best time. I wouldn't want to have been born 50 years earlier than I have, let alone 200 years, let alone 300 years. This whole thing, I mean, again, where right now, if you're a minority, if you're a racial minority, what are the countries that you think is the best place to live in? Countries, cities, locations, what are the best place? Send me location so I can move there. I'm trying to move back to the United States of America because I think the United States of America is a rather amazing place. I'm in Kenya right now. Do I think Kenya is better? Not at the moment. There's a lot of things I would rather be doing in the United States of America than I'd be doing in Kenya. I'm not saying Kenya is horrible, but at the same point, I don't really see people leaving the United States en masse coming to Kenya, trying to be like, yeah, we're going to move here and do these other things here and there. Now, there's ideas and things that can change, ideologies that can change, and you can have different behavior systems. But what are the systems? Thomas Sowell 3. They normally ask this. He says ask these to leftists for economic issues, but life is economics. Econ is life. One of my friends, again, Steven, he posted this thing about how in New York City people are leaving and things like that. This place is crumbling. It's because it's also a monopoly in the sense where monopolies create monopolies. I have a separate video on that. And it's talking about how, in general, everything about life is economics. Cost-benefit analysis is everywhere. When you have a place where it's just one form of government, it's been ran by Democrats for so long, there is no chance, even if it's been run by Republicans for so long, there's stagnation. Competition itself actually invents innovation. It makes you have to keep getting better and better at providing something. People get lazy. People rest on their laurels, and they just sit there, and they just create the same system over and over again, this feedback loop, and nothing more is being done to the point where things are so weak in New York City right now, where it's become uncompetitive. There's very unique things about New York City, but at the same point, people are just like, the positives of actually staying here and restarting in some of these liberal cities are not that high. I'm just going to move. Now that we had the pause from the actual pandemic, and then you add this violence on top of it, people probably had a lot of momentum set in. We're like, oh, we've already invested into these actual buildings. We have these long-term leases. Our employees are already working here. There's already a streamlined supply chain for the different things that we need. We've already done studies and things, and we know the demographics of here. The cost-benefit analysis at that point is like, okay, right now, maintaining this, we think there's a chance if we do this other move, we could increase our revenue by 5% in the next 5 years. Because this is how businesses look. Some of them, it's long-term things. Like, it's going to take us a few quarters. We might dip down. But at the moment, we're already making this money here. To restart all these things with the unsureness of that, there's no point of doing it. But now that they've had the pause, and they're like, okay, so now if we restart here, it's still going to cost us maybe $1 million. We're going to be in the hole for $1 million for the next 5 years. Just like we were saying, if we moved before, we would have been in the hole for $1 million for the next 5 years. But when we did do those moves and start and update our systems and start working in a new way, we would be making 5% more than we're making currently right now in this location. So now all of a sudden that pause has happened, and they're like, okay, it's going to be $1 million hit either way. But after those 5 years, we can either relocate and then now be making that 5% more and be more flexible in this new location and expand, or we restart in this one location that looks like it's still just going to be Democrat ran. It's still going to have these issues. In 5 years, the Democrats are like, yeah, we're not going to have this police reform bill, whether you think it was effective or not, because it's something we can actually have it can be something we use for the election. It's an actual issue. It's an actual problem that we can use as a talking point, as something to campaign on, as something to get people to support us. And this is something that I said comes over and over again. It comes over and over again. When I was reading the thing about police or enforcement agents, I didn't talk about the current George Floyd situation in specific. I went back to something I wrote back in 2016, which was the last election cycle, and that was the thing with Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And again, that was similar to this. Things happen back to back to back, and then these things get picked up by the media, and then the riots and the unrest happens. This is something that has been repetitive. This is something that's happened over and over again. People who start businesses, just regular people in general, we see patterns. Humans recognize patterns, and you start seeing these patterns over and over again. You start seeing what's being done in these places, and you say, okay, so should I restart again? Then maybe in 5 years, when we're just getting back to breaking even, this happens again in this location, so let me try somewhere else. So these are things that are happening. Now, similar thing with this actual letter. These things with Marx, Marxism is not something new. Collectivism politicized is not something, it's been done in many different forms. We're just rehashing something else. This whole idea of going back in time and saying, oh, yeah, we're revolutionaries, we're going to take this over, and then all of a sudden we're going to start saying, then they eat themselves. That again happens over and over again. This whole idea of just going in the past and saying, this person said this in the past, so since they say this in the past, we got to cancel them now. We got to take them down now. That is a thing that repeats over and over again. You do stuff like that, it's going to continue. And I have a great frustration here. There's, of course, the double standard they're going to have. I don't think they would hold Marx responsible for this. They'll find some way to excuse, oh, it was just the times that he was speaking and whatnot. But it's not even the concept. You don't object to the concept, you object to the application. Because you look at Barack Obama, people focus on his blackness, that one drop thing. That's something they focus on the left. Just like this Marx was focusing on the potential blackness. So it's not necessarily that the objection is someone's race is being taken into account on how you judge the person. It's that you are objecting to somebody's race being a negative. Not that that is more of a focus than the content of their character. Then it goes to the whole times and things like this. We think people talk about the effects that they do things, but just think about the times that have changed. Now, you don't just post to your friends talking about things together in some letters or just in some groups with your friend and your wife. People go directly on Twitter and tweet directly at the leaders and like, hey, or you just be like, hey, my boy just said he was hanging out with you when he came to like Europe and he was with you. Vittorio Emanuele, hit him up on Twitter. Was he really there? Vittorio Emanuele was like, no, look at my Instagram. I was somewhere else. That guy had nothing to do with that. It's a different time. There's some frustration. There's a lot of frustration on my part. I think many of you who are listening to this, you're frustrated about certain things. But there are things that are repetitive. But at the same time, sometimes something repeats enough that you learn and you do it better. You're able to recognize it faster and move on to something else, or you have new tools to prevent that repetition. I don't know. So just some frustration with this. I just thought this was a meme whisperer. This is reading this letter. Let me know what you think about this. Do you think this is going to matter to Marxists if they actually see letters like this, especially when it comes to black Marxists? There's a different article somewhere posted where it was like Marxism was used specifically to control the black community in the United States of America. And I might read that article some other time, but I just thought this was something worth reading. Let me know what you think about this letter. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised that this is the way people talk. That's why I'm glad to be alive now. That's why I don't think the United States of America is the most racist country in the world and place, because I have a general understanding of what history was. I have seen how other places are. It's been a lot worse. It's getting better. It can get better, but do I think the United States of America is a place where it can get a lot better than other places? Yeah. Do I have biases towards that? Yeah, probably do. Am I open to actually discuss them? Yeah. But let me know what you think about this letter. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for taking your time to come read this. Let me know if there's other cool things that you think. I just think it's kind of cool to actually go back and just see just regular daily correspondence and get a little. It felt like I was just right there with Marx, right there with Uncle Karl Marx, and just hearing what was happening in their lives. And just him just trolling and lulzing at people. Like, I don't even know how serious he was about these things. I don't think he had, like, complete vitriol, like, oh, I hate this nigger, I hate this person. Like it's kind of just how I think if you have conversations between your friends, you talk in a certain parlance, you talk in a certain way, even though those terms were a lot more generally used in the back in the day. Like if this letter got out during that time that he had said that, I don't think there would have been anyone who's like, yeah, you can't actually hold a position. We lose respect for you because of using that term. It was still a negative term. But in the same point, and he was still obviously still associating with the person, so it's not like, oh, this person is completely blown. So anyway, so like, share, subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.